When Randy Rhoads, Ozzy Osbourne's guitar genius, died in a scary plane crash, the rock and roll world was broken. What was supposed to be a fun airplane ride turned into one of the most frightening accidents in music history. For many years, fans were told it was the pilot's mistake, but whispers of a violent fight in the cockpit and a hidden accusation suggest something far darker. Did someone mess with the plane on purpose? And if so, who wanted Randy gone? After years of secrets and guessing, the shocking truth has finally come to light, and it's worse than anyone imagined. On March 18, 1982, Randy Rhoads, the 25-year-old genius guitarist for Ozzy Osbourne, was on tour with the Ozzy Osbourne Band. He was alongside Ozzy, his drummer Tommy Aldridge, bassist Rudy Sarzo, keyboardist Don Airey, manager Sharon, Ozzy's fiancée, and tour manager Jake Duncan. They were touring to promote their new album, Diary of a Madman. The band performed at the Knoxville Civic Coliseum in Tennessee and got on their tour bus after. Right away they went on their way to the next venue, the Rock Super Bowl 14, which was in Orlando, Florida. The tour had been a difficult one, not because of any technical difficulty or anything, but because of Ozzy himself. He was difficult to deal with and had been making their tour frustrating with his heavy drinking. Because of the drinking, Randy told Ozzy, "You know, one of these days." Randy wasn't like the other rock and rollers. He didn't believe in the wild lifestyle. Despite the craziness on stage, he chose to live a disciplined life. For Randy, rock and roll wasn't just about making music. It was an art. And because of how he saw rock and roll, Randy constantly grew and changed, trying different things which made Ozzy's music better. Ozzy was determined to keep Randy by his side. Randy didn't just make his music better. Randy was the reason Ozzy remained a rock and roller. However, it looked like apart from the music, Ozzy didn't value Randy's opinion. At least he didn't agree with Randy that he was drinking or using drugs too much. Any time Ozzy drank and used drugs, he was a mess. When the effect wore off, sometimes sleeping as if he was dead. So, when their tour bus stopped at Flying Baron Estates in Leesburg, Florida in the morning to repair a broken air conditioning unit, Ozzy was asleep. He didn't know anything was going on. The estate they stayed on for the repair was owned by the Calhoun Brothers Tour Bus Company, who owned the tour bus they were on. It had everything a couple of stressed rock and roll artists could use for fun. However, there were things the musicians were most interested in: the private airstrip with small planes and helicopters. Despite being tired, Andrew Aycock, the band's bus driver, suggested that they take one of the small planes for a spin. Andrew was a licensed pilot and promised the members of the band that it would be safe. He told them he knew the area well, and it was true. Sharon knew Andrew was licensed, too, but Sharon knew one thing about Andrew. However, she decided not to say anything because she couldn't have. When they had arrived at the estate, she and Ozzy were in the tour bus. Andrew also didn't tell those he wanted to fly with 3 things. The first one was that his medical certificate showing he was fit to fly had expired. The second one was that his biennial flight review was overdue. The third one, stick around and find out. Andrew didn't get permission and went to take a 1955 Beechcraft Bonanza F-35, registered to Mike Parton from a hangar. Don and Jake Duncan had agreed to ride the plane with him and must have been shocked when Andrew flew low and zoomed past the tour bus so he would wake Tommy and the others sleeping in it, including Ozzy. His wife Wanda was also on the bus, too. Andrew had invited her to the tour because their marriage was struggling and he was trying to fix things with her. It didn't look like he was able to fix things. Flying that close to the bus was a risky thing to do, and any slight mistake meant he would crash into the bus and kill everyone on it. Andrew didn't think he was taking a risk, or did he? Was what he was doing on purpose? Could he have had a reason in mind? Andrew seemed like he was having fun, but it didn't seem like Don and Jake were having the same kind of fun. Right after Andrew landed, they left the plane and weren't willing to go on another ride. While they thought Andrew was acting crazy, they didn't think anything bad was going to happen. They should have. Andrew didn't want to fly alone. So, he went to meet Rachel Youngblood and Randy Rhoads for a second flight. But there was a slight issue. Rachel had a heart problem, and Randy hated flying. The two of them had just seen the crazy low-flying Andrew had done. They didn't want any part of that. But Andrew wasn't a man to take no for an answer. He kept begging and convincing the two of them that he was going to fly safely. He told them he was just going to circle the estate. That looked harmless. So Randy and Rachel agreed. Randy was an amateur photographer and he took his camera along. He thought the flying would give him the chance to take pretty amazing photographs from the air. They didn't know that Andrew would do what came next. Andrew took to the skies and he right away tried to fly low and wake the people on the bus up. He didn't hit it the first time and he was pretty close to crashing into the bus. Andrew wasn't satisfied despite knowing his 2 passengers would be freaking out. He did it a second time and it was close again. Then Andrew had the bright idea to do it for the 3rd time, but the 3rd time wasn't going to be a charm. On the ground, Don was watching Andrew fly. Jake had joined the others in the bus. Don claimed that he was taking photos of the plane because he wanted to give them to Randy afterwards. Randy would add those pictures to the ones he took while he was on the plane. While taking those photos of the plane, Don noticed something. The plane was flying lower to the ground than usual. Don could have sworn that the people on that plane were struggling. Then the plane came racing towards him and Andrew wouldn't pull up. Don claimed he jumped out of the way and then it happened. Wanda, who was in the tour bus too, had gotten out at this point. Probably she just wanted to see what the fuss of the constant plane flying over the tour bus was about. If she had been a little bit unlucky, she would have been knocked down when one of the plane's wings hit the top of the tour bus and split into 2 parts. The roof of the bus tore open like paper and the broken part of the wing flew off into the wind. The remaining part and the plane began to spin. The impact of the wing with the bus sent Randy's and Rachel's heads crashing through the plane's windshield. They hadn't recovered from that when the spinning plane crashed into and cut off the top of a pine tree before eventually crashing into the garage of a mansion on the estate. The plane right away burst into flames upon impact and exploded in a massive fiery fireball. Bits and pieces of Randy and the others in the plane flew everywhere. The crash woke Ozzy and the other people in the tour bus up. Ozzy was alarmed when the noise woke him and thought the bus had gotten into an accident on the road. He claimed he didn't even know they had a stopover at the estate to fix faulty air conditioners. He kept on yelling to Sharon to get off and Sharon kept screaming at the other band members to do the same. When they got out, Ozzy realized what happened. He saw a plane burning, but he wasn't sure who it belonged to or who flew it. Then they told him. When Ozzy found out it was Randy and his other crew, he went crazy. Jake kept screaming, "They are gone! They are gone!" And Ozzy became frantic. He tried to get help on the scene. While he was doing that, he saw someone run past him and straight towards the fire. It was Tommy. Tommy was trying to wake him up. And now he was up and trying to see if he could save Andrew's life. Tommy got a fire extinguisher from the bus, but the flames were far too powerful for the extinguisher. It was a useless attempt. Tommy must have known, but he needed to do something. After the fire burned for 30 minutes, a small fire engine arrived. It fought the fire, but that was one part. Ozzy and the rest needed to make phone calls, but they couldn't get anyone until later. When they did, it was time to make some calls. Sharon called her father, who was Ozzy's former manager, and the news soon made it to the media afterwards. Randy's girlfriend, Jody Raskin, was driving when songs from the Blizzard of Oz album kept playing on the radio. Then came the announcement. Randy was dead. Jody stopped the car and just parked by the road and was unable to drive afterwards. Meanwhile, Sharon was losing her mind at the scene. She kept on screaming at Jake, the tour manager, asking him why he would allow Andrew to fly anyone. She knew Andrew before now, and she thought everyone also knew him, especially Jake. Jake was supposed to have done background research on the crew since he was the tour manager. Jake should have known that this wasn't the first time Andrew had flown recklessly and gotten someone hurt. 6 years before this accident, Andrew had been involved in a crash in United Arab Emirates, and he had gotten one of the Calhoun's children killed. The same Calhoun that owned the estate they were in and the bus they used. That's not all. Investigators were now on the scene when Randy's brother-in-law flew in from California to Leesburg to identify the guitarist's remains. The fire had burned him and the others beyond recognition. They were able to identify Randy's remains and that of the others. The investigators took the statement of the people on the scene and did an autopsy on the remains of the deceased while the music world mourned. Black Sabbath thought it was Ozzy that had died because they knew him. He was reckless. And if a member of Ozzy's band were to die from recklessness, they thought it would be him. Drummer Frankie Banali, Randy's close friend, was shocked by what he heard and contacted Rudy Sarzo to check on him. Rudy was taking what happened pretty badly. It seemed like he was carrying the guilt of Randy's death. Randy hated flying and he had invited Rudy to fly with him, but Rudy decided that he wanted to sleep instead. Maybe Rudy was thinking he could have stopped Andrew from flying wildly. Maybe he could have convinced Randy not to fly. After the crash, Rudy felt so lost. The investigators had moved them to a hotel and he kept wandering around. Rudy found a church near the hotel they had been taken to. He went inside to pray and saw the church was empty except for one man at the front near the altar crying uncontrollably. Rudy felt his sadness by the display of overwhelming grief of this man. He wondered why the man was crying until suddenly the man yelled, "Why? Why?" And Rudy realized it was Osborne. Ozzy was one of the most hit by Randy's death. When he was at his lowest, Randy helped bring him back, but their relationship got strained. Although some people thought Ozzy wasn't sincere. We'll give you more details later. Everyone wondered what went wrong on the plane. Don had said that there was a struggle, but there wasn't anything to back this claim up. Why would Randy be struggling on the plane? Then the result of the autopsy came in. When the death happened, guitarist Eddie Van Halen guessed that the pilot must have not been in his right mind. Eddie kept saying a normal person wouldn't fly that low. He was right. According to the coroner's report, Andrew had cocaine inside him. Before the flight, Andrew was reported to be in a bad emotional state. He had brought his wife on the tour bus to fix their marriage. However, it didn't seem to have worked out, and that upset Andrew, and someone made a suggestion. We'd get there too soon. But here's where it gets confusing. According to authorities, the cocaine in Andrew was small, so it couldn't have been the main cause of his recklessness. It still didn't change the fact that he was reckless. So, authorities claimed that with his expired medical certificate and overdue flight review, Andrew was not legally fit to fly. But Andrew had successfully flown the first time. So, what really happened? Then came a shocking revelation. Rudy and Don noted that Andrew couldn't sleep and was emotionally disturbed because he and his wife hadn't made up. So Andrew decided to fly to pass the time and have fun. So when Andrew kept flying over the bus, it could be that it was actually his wife that he wanted to make sure that she couldn't sleep. When Wanda left the bus to check the ruckus, it was during the last attempt that Andrew made. Rudy and Don believed that Andrew made that attempt because he had made the terrible and impulsive decision to kill her by crashing the plane into the bus. They believed Randy saved their lives. Could this be true? If that was true, that would be the first time that Randy saved lives. He saved Ozzy's before, but Ozzy repaid Randy by killing him. At least according to some people. Are they right? Wait, let us explain.